So your parents always really value traditional education. They really wanted to push you towards university and different courses. Was there any tension when you were growing up where you really wanted to go after your entrepreneurial ambitions?
I mean, it wasn't, let's say, it wasn't swords at dawn tension. We weren't, I wasn't going to pack my bags and move out of the house in the middle of the night. But it was definitely we both wanted to go in different directions tension. And when you're a kid, or when you're younger and when you're in the moment of something, you never really want to appreciate anybody else's point of view. And I think also back then, I probably could never have appreciated that point of view. But I think for people listening to this now, you've got to understand that we're talking 25 years ago, the world was just a very different place. And as much as I wanted to go off in the entrepreneurial direction because that's what I wanted to do, I also now understand from my parents' perspective that up until maybe 2000, certainly the early 2000s, if you did not have some kind of formal qualification, if you hadn't been to university, I mean, not only were you really considered a failure to your parents, particularly if you'd already been through private education, because it was like, well, what's the point in doing private education for school if you're not then going to go and follow that on with university? But if you didn't have a university degree, you couldn't even get an interview in any of the mainstream business. You couldn't get an interview in any kind of corporate business. Now, I never cared about that because I was like, well, I'm never going to work in corporate. I'll be fine. My backup plan is myself anyway, so I don't need a backup plan. But no, from their perspective, I think there was two angles to it. One was my mum was romantically attached to education. I think, she just had this big thing about classics in education and professors, etc. But just from a purely practical perspective, they wanted me to not fail in the real world.
It's really interesting as well because before we started recording, you're talking about how your daughter's looking at different universities, right? So it's almost like university is it's a good railroad for parents just to keep trying to look after their kids. It's not necessarily that they're weighing up uni is good or bad for you. It's just they're going, this will hopefully keep you on the right track for a little bit longer. Do you think, does that relate to what your parents took a view of you?
I mean, I was going to answer the question in a slightly different way, as in not so much with my parents, but with my daughter now. Because I think a lot of people will be like, well, why is your daughter going to uni if you don't believe in uni? And it's not that I don't believe in uni, it's that I believe in the right path or the best path or the fastest path for what the outcome you want is. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I want that now. And if my daughter wanted to be an entrepreneur, I think I'd probably be having very different conversations with her. Not necessarily saying you're not going to university, but wanting her to understand that is spending those 3 or 4 years of her life and the money that goes with it really going to get her to where she wants to be. But as I was saying to you, she wants to be an aerospace engineer, as I think, because it's way above my pay grade, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to be in that space, then the only place to get that education, the only place to go down that route is university. So it's not that uni as a concept is bad. It's that, what is the right vehicle to get you to the destination that you want to go in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting point. And I'm interested in, because obviously not all entrepreneurs, not all people in general are exposed to entrepreneurship or business from a young age. But your father had a business, right? And I've seen you speak about before and write about you trying to sit in on client meetings or conversations you'd have with your mother around the dinner table talking about business. And was that something that sparked your interest in business from a young age?
I think it must have done. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember this one particular event where it was like, I'd always wanted to be a football player, and then I heard my dad, fire someone, and I was so excited. I thought that's how I'm going to spend the rest of my life. But I think being in that environment must have made me like business. The other thing was that, again, in the same way that back in the, let's say, 90s and 80s, that the only way to kind of secure your future was to go to uni. The other perception at that time, potential, almost reality, was that the only way to make big money was to own your own business. And I think my original driver was probably more money than it was business. Certainly, I can remember from being 8 years old, anyone I'd be saying to my mum, is he a millionaire? Is he a millionaire? And it was normally like an actor or a magician or we'll talk about magic, I'm sure, but because I just wanted to earn money. And I think, coupled with the fact that I had this, almost like pathological obsession with making money, coupled with the fact that the only real way perceived to do it was to own your own business, not to work for someone else. That probably made me think in that direction, coupled with the fact that my dad had his own business, and it just became my interest, and I can, as much as I can remember being 8 years old asking if someone was a millionaire, I can remember being 11 years old plus, just lying in bed at night reading, whatever business books I could get my hands on, which again, putting that into context, when you say 30 years ago reading whatever business books I can get my hands on, it was, which 2 or 3 hardbacks did I find in my dad's library? I mean, there was no, there was no proliferation. I mean, I went on Amazon 2 nights ago to order myself a few books. Just bing, 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 bing. I ordered like 15 books without thinking that'll be there 24 hours later. I mean, that's probably more books in 24 hours than I got to read in 24 months as a kid.
It's wild, isn't it? And like, I think the role model thing is really important as well. I think I didn't have entrepreneurs around me when I was growing up, but so when I say I was interested in business, I think what I mean, and it kind of relates to what I've seen you talk about, is I was just interested in problem solving. And you see people making money, and my not role model, but the person I always thought was rich, quote unquote, was Alan Sugar on a Wednesday night, right?
That was one of these books I read.
Really?
It was the Amstrad Way, I think it was called.
Yeah. So how funny is that? So you look at him and you go, well, he's worth, is he a billionaire?
I think so.
Yeah. So you look at him and go, he's the richest guy because he's on TV, he's hiring and firing people. But it's a very linear way to look at business. And I didn't even think I understood business at all. I wanted to be in business, but what I thought about was just trying to solve tiny problems, which is similar, I guess, to what you've did, because you dabbled in a few things, trying to buy and sell stuff, a bit about domains, but also touch on the magic thing, right? So you had a job at an Italian restaurant, but you also did a bit of magic for them as almost a side hustle.
No. The job in the Italian restaurant was the magician.
I see. Okay.
So that was, I guess that was hobby / wanting to earn money. So as much as I had my passion for business or my wanting to work in business, my childhood hobby was performing magic. And again, from probably, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, that was how I would spend my free time, learning magic tricks, wanting to perform magic tricks. I enjoyed the magic, and then also in my head I was going to be a millionaire, famous magician, or Danny Zuko in Greece, one or the other. So the job came about because I wanted a watch, I wanted a Rolex, and my parents said that I had to go and buy it myself. And I guess the only way I kind of had to do it was to go and try and do something with the magic. I'd done a bit of performing anyway, when I say at corporate events, after dinner magic and stuff like that, where I'd earned myself 100 quid here, a couple hundred quid there. So I knew I could do it, and I knew people would like it and pay me. So I went to the local restaurant, which at the time, again, this is 30 plus years ago. This restaurant was very cool. It was like the place to be. Again, there's a lot less restaurants back then than there were now. So anybody who was anybody was there on a Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. So I went to the owner and said, please can I perform a magic here? And they wouldn't pay me. He said I could just do it for experience and tips. Although a couple of weeks later, he started to give me a garlic bread when I left on a night as well. So I was hired for a garlic bread. But I was earning tips only, but doing 200, 300, 400 quid a night on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, which is obviously 16 years old, earning 200 to 400 quid a night is good money now. Never mind back then. And At the time, I never saw it as this, because back then I just wanted to get my hands on some money to go and to go and buy this watch. But in hindsight, it was a very important lesson in the importance of being in the right vehicle again. What is going to take you to where you want to be. And looking back, all my friends would take the piss out of me, basically saying, "You're working for free. They don't pay you." Or they're giving you a garlic bread. Why would you possibly work for free? completely oblivious to the fact that, you know, I should be paying them to work. If they said to me, you can pay us £100 a night to, you know, to rent space in this restaurant, it would still be the best deal ever, because I'd still be walking home with £200 or £300. And, you know, far too often people get caught up on, particularly when it comes to, like, you know, what first jobs people take, and, you know, do they get 18 grand a year to go and work for this person, or it's 22 grand a year to work for this person? You know, in the grand scheme of it, you know, the money's negligible. You're better off going to work for somebody else for free.
If you like these episodes, feel free to subscribe to our Healthy Hustle newsletter below, where you'll get behind-the-scenes information from our guests, as well as from the studio operator who helps us create these cinematic episodes. It's also full of business advice and tips, and it will help you join the community of healthy entrepreneurs.